More fun with the timeline analysis. This is what happens when you're born with certain conditions. One of the biological markers of schizophrenia is hyperatrophy of the frontal lobes. It means overuse, overthinking. Can't shut the voices out. Voices are just thoughts. Inner monologue. Anyway. More fun with the timeline analysis. Now, there is a master scheme to all this, a meta-analysis. The information integration of this timeline will all lead to a single focal point that breaks down like a pyramid into so many multifaceted details and sub-branches and micro-details, etc. Germany. In the 1890s, in the late 1800s, and early 1900s, had the best physicians on the planet. I'm gonna guess, I could be wrong, most of them were German Jews. Just a guess. These doctors, these physicians, figured out that smoking tobacco caused lung cancer. I believe this was, established by 1890, but definitively beyond a reasonable doubt by at least 1914 by these German physicians. This was one of the biggest things about Hitler's fascism, 1930s to 1945, that, I think 1933 to 1945 specifically, that had a lot of positives to it. Fascists under Hitler aggressively enforced a non-smoking campaign. Germany's cancer rates went down to record lows, while the rest of the world's went up because of the Industrial Revolution. Running out of space to write on this thing. Industrial Revolution, right around here. Industrial Revolution. Boom. So Germany's lung cancer rates wasn't just because of the non-smoking. Another facet of Hitler's socialism was not just the 40-hour work week and things like that, but he enacted laws so that if an employee contracted cancer through their employment, the employer was financially responsible. This created incentive for the employer to create safer working conditions. So what capitalists hated at the time. The capitalists were people who, you need to make child labor laws for the capitalists because they had 10-year-olds working in factories who were alcoholics in New York City in this time, in the beginning of the 1900s. Fun side note, when I watched that footage of Thomas Edison frying that elephant in Philadelphia, I imagine he saw some little kids on the street, some street urchins, and was like, "Hey kids, you want to make a nickel?" And the kids totally helped him fry this out. "Whoa, look at that, mister! It stinks really bad." Like just little alcoholic, street urchins smoking cigarettes at like 8 years old. Yeah. Cigarettes, tobacco, cancer. Now, this means that, oh, by the way, the Nazis also had a huge war on cancer. They were the first ones to develop chemotherapy. I believe they injected a camera film treating chemical, thoride or something, thorium, I can't remember. And that was the first development of chemotherapy. The Nazis had a huge war on cancer. And they were environmentalists. I like that about them. I don't hate the Nazis. If only they would have won, I could have a better accurate thing, but I've learned to distinguish between fantasy and reality. The Nazis were not this drug-free mecca that I crave. Nazi Germany might have been. No secondhand marijuana smoke. But Hitler was on methamphetamines. Definitely in the 1936 Berlin Olympics or whatever it was when he was, tweaking so hard he couldn't hold still. Blitzkrieg, methamphetamine, Pervitin, prescription meth. German physicians were putting methamphetamine in chocolates for women on their periods. What a good idea. Your girl's on her period? Yeah, give her meth. I digress. This means that since at least the 1930s, at least World War II, and this is ignoring World War I, by the way, there's so much that just leads up to this. The United States government has known, since at least World War II, that smoking tobacco caused lung cancer. The United States government suppressed that information for decades, so Philip Morris could make a profit. I believe into the 1970s. Where are we at? Right here. 1970s, Marlboro Man dies of lung cancer. Yeah. At the same time, Hitler and the Nazis, right? These German physicians also figured out that mining raw uranium unventilated was positively linked to cancer. The United States had Native Americans in places like Arizona and New Mexico mining raw uranium unventilated, no protection, no policies in place to prevent them from getting cancer. This went all the way into the 1980s. I believe 1986 was the last year they were doing it. So when you tell me that capitalism, America, and freedom are superior to nationalist socialism, I can't help but think of all the Native Americans that died mining raw uranium for companies that built atom bombs and nuclear power plants, which electricity did sustain a lot of lives of Native Americans and just Americans in general. It's not a moral condemnation. I can't objectively say this is morally good or morally bad. It's just objective presentation of facts. Now when you contrast Christian capitalist United States with nationalist socialist Germany, you see a lot of negatives on both sides, but it's like seeing a negative so you can see the positive, right? When the United States says that it's the best, America number one, morally superior, why did the United States allow millions, and undoubtedly billions by now, of its own population, willingly, knowingly, to contract lung cancer through smoking? So Philip Morris can make money. Why did the United States allow Native Americans to mine raw uranium unventilated? So not only could there be money to be made in nuclear power, but nuclear bombs. These little details excuse me, overlap this break between the Great Depression and the 1960s. The baby boom, the boomer generation, right? While all this was going on, people were doing drugs and having sex. That seems like the worst thing to do. Given you think you would just learn from history. To be fair, a lot of boomers weren't taught the real history. They believed Joseph Mengele, for example, was a monster who did all these awful experiments on Jews. Hilariously, Joseph Mengele had a Jewish assistant, Nikolai, something like that. Now, I don't want us to come to anti-Semitism, but this is the truth. You can fact check me all you want. I can cite my data sources for anyone who wants to validate or falsify my claims. I can quantify and qualify them. If it wasn't for Joseph Mengeler's research, the medical industry would not be what it is today. His research has saved countless lives, undoubtedly billions of lives, because of the findings of the experiments he conducted. Now, for the funny side, my joke about his Jewish assistant when I was really in my anti-Semitic phase was that, the biggest crime is the Jew is forced to work for free without being paid. It's a joke. It's just funny, right? But then when you Google it, you find out that this is actually something he was really upset about and wrote a book to sell a book to make money off his experiences. That way he could be financially compensated, right? One way or the other. Could be a good book. I don't know. Maybe I'll read it. But that relates to my current contrast of Catholicism and Judaism. The Jews have not bothered to reach out to me to say, how are you doing? Do you need help? It's Hanukkah. Do you want to play dreidel? We can teach you how. No. They send emails and stuff, but no personal outreach communication, let alone showing up in person to my address. They are asking for money. Wait. I purchased the Siddur from the StudyJudaism.net thing, which is a pretty good book. I do enjoy reading it. This is not my first Art Scroll book. I also have the Art Scroll Tanakh. But the Siddur got me on a list. 50% off. Fully loaded iPad. Black Friday sales. Art Scroll catalog. Tons of emails from Chabad, etc. I donated to Chabad this year. I forgot to tally that with all the money I gave to Jewish organizations and Jews this year. Different Chabads. At least 3 different Chabads emailing me for money. I gave more money to Jews this year than I've given to anyone in my entire life. And as a thank you, I got kicked out of the Hebrew school, kicked out of the Converting to Judaism course, and they still hit me up for money. However, Judaism is far superior as a religion. Unironically. It's insanely sharp and intelligent. I weaponize it. Weaponize psychology, and it's very effective that way. It has a lot more real-life application than Catholicism, who believes that you're transforming bread into wine into the flesh and blood of this Messiah who failed to fulfill all the messianic prophecies. And Judaism has its flaws, don't get me wrong. There's questions, there's loopholes, there's certain things that Rambam and Rashi and Nachmanides, etc. Nachmanides was. Anyway, all these great thinkers have addressed, but not definitively. It's opinionated interpretation. So yeah, nonetheless. It's a very interesting thing. It's a very interesting choice because right now, I think that I do need human contact. It would be very nice for me to, like when the dog dies, replace the dog with people. Maybe a girlfriend even, right? That'd be great. Well, it depends on the girl. Gotta be picky. Jews aren't doing that. They're hitting it for money, but they're not. The relationship is not reciprocal, but I still feel drawn to it. If you look at this timeline here, And if the white supremacists are right, which I doubt, but they do have some accurate statements. There's a lot of lies mixed in with truth on all sides. If it's the Jews behind Weimar Germany, the drug and sex revolution, the civil rights movement, all these things that destroyed, thus transformed the United States, Jews behind corporations, Jews behind corporate America, Jews in the Senate, Jews in the Congress, so forth and so on. This makes me want to convert to Judaism even more, because that is superiority. Growing up Mexican, we always thought that whites were a bit superior on many things. You didn't mess with whitey. You could, and we did, but the consequences were like, dude, this is the guy who dominated the planet. This is a strong, fierce opponent, right? So to hear the white man cry oppression from Jews, well, you cannot have oppression without superiority. You cannot be oppressed if you are not dominated. You cannot be oppressed by your inferiors. So, by the Nazis' own standards, Jews are the real master race. Jews are superior to the Aryan, the Anglo-Saxon, etc. I'm not saying that's true. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying by their own standards, because they lost the war. And their own version of events is we lost the war because Jews like Warburg, manipulated the American Congress to fund the Soviet Union and so forth and so on. Well, this means the Jews are superior. They use their intelligence to defeat a stronger, enemy, etc. Yeah. If 2% of the global population can defeat populations that large, that outnumbered, right? I want that. I want to overcome, not be the plaything of the forces acting upon me. I want to forge my own destiny, no matter the resistance. And Judaism seems to be much better at that than Catholicism. That's a vague generalizing statement. I should quantify that in conclusion. The Pope recently invited 45 transgenders to the Vatican. And that's just one of many liberal things that he's done. Now to say, oh, well, Jews aren't like that. No. Jews, there's reformist Jews that are absolutely like that. So it helps to be clear. It helps to be specific about what I mean when I say Judaism. To me right now, Judaism is what's in this book. And what's in this book? The Tanakh. And what I can get on the internet. I, once again, find myself without rabbinical guidance, etc. So, I don't know. Can I have Judaism without the Jews? I don't think so.